In this lecture, we're going to look at the topic of open innovation. We're going to see what open innovation is, how and to what extent it differs from older innovation model called closed innovation model, and we're going to see to what extent networks contribute to a better understanding of open innovation. What is open innovation? In this slide, we capture the evolution from closed to open innovation. Closed innovation was the dominant innovation model until, let's say, the emergence of the internet. Of course, there are exceptions, and closed innovation is largely an umbrella term that captures lots of different phenomena. The basic idea is that in closed innovation, innovation is an internal function of a company. A company or an organization is a hierarchical distribution of resources which is controlled largely by authority, by contracts. In open innovation, innovation is performed by networks of individuals and organizations, part of which are not controlled by hierarchies, are not controlled by legal contracts. So what we're going to look at is the transition from closed to open. First, closed innovation model. As I said, it's based on the idea that innovation is an internal function of the company. It is controlled by a hierarchy, which really means that innovation is part of the strategy set by a company, the strategy set by the top echelon of the company, by management, and it percolates down to R&D department. Innovation priorities are transformed into projects. Projects are decided by management, and management assign resources, identifies expertise within the company to carry out the project, sets a minimum quality for the projects, products, or services to be developed, and assign a specific time for the execution of the project. So in a closed innovation model, the allocation of tasks is decided by experts of management, in this case of strategy, and performed by other experts, and these are technical experts in a specific area of the project. Also, in a closed innovation model, the basic idea is that knowledge is the competitive constitutes the basis of the competitive advantage of the organization, and therefore it has to be kept under control of the organization and protected from leakage toward the outside. The way to do that is to perform a so-called IP, intellectual property strategy, whereby knowledge is protected by patents, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, whichever the specific legal defense line is established, and then that property, in this case intellectual property, is defended in courts via legal approaches, legal tools. Okay. Another aspect of all what we have said is, a consequence of what we have said is the so-called the corporate ethos or not invented here syndrome. This is something that is characteristic of excellent organizations that excel at technical issues, and they can be in any area. They tend to this is characteristic of large organizations that control or are excellent in a certain area of knowledge, and what happens is that they tend to believe that competitors may not match their level of expertise. So they tend to disregard knowledge coming from the outside. Second, role of customers. In a closed innovation model, customers are just the buyers of products developed by the company. Okay? So they are passive recipients. They are not involved in co-design as it is in an open innovation model or the most advanced open innovation models. The way to judge innovation is as shown here. A way to represent a closed innovation model is to use the traditional representation of new product development. New product development is usually represented as a funnel in which ideas enter from the left-hand side. Ideas are the basic raw material from which products and service will evolve. And on the right-hand side, you have products or services hitting the market. What happens in a closed innovation model? In a closed innovation model, the ideas are generated, are supposed to be generated within the organization. In a traditional new product development, you have many ideas at the beginning and few products and services at the end. In certain industries, like pharmaceutical, if you have one product, is acceptable per year. In other industries like software, you may have multiple products per year, per company. The basic idea is that, as I said, knowledge is generated within the organization. The process of selection from many ideas to few products and services is performed within the management set by the organization, and clearly the ideas or the half-baked products that do not make it to the end are stored on the metaphorical shelves of the organization. Okay? So it is a process, closed innovation model is a process whereby internal ideas are selected via the management techniques set by the organization and give rise to a few products that hit the market. The products, as I said, the ideas that do not make to the market are stored in the memory or lost in the memory of the organization or lost in the organization. Okay, now let's talk about open innovation. Open innovation, the term open innovation comes from that book you see on the left-hand side by Henry Chesbrough, and is maybe defined as a paradigm, so a change in the basic assumptions of how to do business, and it's based on a different approach to knowledge. So the approach is that firms or organizations can and should use external ideas as well as internal ideas, and internal and external paths to market in the strategy. So the knowledge management strategy becomes a way in which an external network of ideas, organizations, and individuals is associated with the internal structured organization in order to create more knowledge, more products, and more services. The idea of open innovation has given rise to the idea of open business models. Open business models are the way in which value is extracted from internal networks and external networks, external to the specific organization, of course, and is transformed by a set of techniques, part of which are not controlled by the organizations because they are controlled by external organizations, individuals, and networks. So the value is transformed into products and services. This is an open business model. Open meaning that is not completely under the control of the organization developing a specific product or service. And if you want to Another definition of open innovation, again, is a way to systematically perform knowledge exploration, knowledge retention, and knowledge exploitation inside using channels that are present inside but also outside of the organizational boundaries alongside the life cycle of the innovation project. So what is important in this definition is the articulation of the idea of the knowledge management strategy in terms of exploration, finding new things, retention, which really means capturing those new things and storing them into organizational memory, and then using that knowledge in order to design new products and new services that exploit the knowledge that's been first found and then stored. Okay, now let's reapply the idea of the funnel, which, as I said, is one of the fundamental ideas that one uses to represent the new product or new service development process, to the open innovation context. First, where do ideas come from? As you can see on the left-hand side, ideas may come from the internal technology base, but also from the external technology base, which means that an organization has to develop resources that are able to generate ideas from the inside, but are able to find out ideas in the external world or coming from the external world. First. Second, we said that in a new product service development process, you have many ideas entering the funnel and few products or services hitting the market at the end. What happens to the ideas that do not make it to the end? In a closed innovation model, they are stored or forgotten. In an open innovation model, they are supposed to generate value by giving them out to external organizations via spin-offs, spin-outs, venturing, all sorts of organizational alliances that can fertilize the external environment and create or contribute to strengthening the ecosystem of the organization. We're going to talk about ecosystems in a couple of lectures. Okay? So at the moment, just keep the term in your mind. Now, is open innovation new? To a certain extent, open innovation is not new, meaning that organizations have always had a set of collaborations with other organizations, with individuals, with research institutes, with universities, and so on and so forth. Organizations have often got ideas or collaborated with suppliers or from customers. We know that industrial clusters a la Silicon Valley or fashion clusters and so on and so forth have always been around. Joint ventures, licensing, outsourcing have always been used. What's new is a context. What is new is the internet. What is new is the fact that knowledge is now freely available, and the asymmetry between who controls knowledge and who uses knowledge has largely disappeared. Now, any computer, a smartphone can be seen as a point of access into the most developed brain exists in the world, which is the brain of the internet. Okay? And access to that brain has largely been democratized. Also, competition has become more important with the entry of Southeast Asia, for instance, or the emergence of Latin America, or the destruction of barriers, regulatory barriers, liberalization, and all these political movements that have changed the institutions in which organizations live. The rate of innovation has increased, which means that we have much more, we need deeper and a larger number of expertises in order to compete, what I call the complexification of technology or the complexification of knowledge. This means that no organization in the world, even the largest in the world, can aspire to control or own or dominate the basic knowledge or all the branches of knowledge they need in order to be competitive in the market. Turbulence, meaning the acceleration competition, has also changed the way we think of intellectual property strategy, because if industry is turbulent, like many, for instance, industries in IT, then protecting knowledge may not be a very sensible strategy, because if it changes very quickly, you simply do not have the time to codify, store, and protect it. It's much better to try to move as fast as possible and dominate following waves of expertise in a knowledge area. So what are the open innovation principles that Chesbrough describes in his book? First, as we said, knowledge has become very complex. No organization possesses and owns it. If you want, and then you can turn that into the simple sentence that most of the smart people that you may need for product or service development don't work for your company, but they're there. And as we're going to see in the next lecture, many of them are happy to collaborate to develop new things. So the question is, how do we find the experts out there in the world, and how do we harness their intelligence and provide incentives for collaboration? But if most smart people do not work for your company, then it is important in competitive terms that you find a way, as we said, to find them and tap into the knowledge and expertise, which really means developing external networks. And if you now apply the idea of small worlds, if these organizations or largely individuals or communities exist outside of the organization, they are not likely at the beginning to be connected with the organization, but they are likely to form their own small worlds outside of the organization. So what the organization has to do is to develop a weak link to them in order to expose two different networks, the network organization and the network of inventors, communities, individuals out there, in order to make them collaborate and exchange knowledge. The fact that large part of the knowledge may not be within the organization doesn't mean that the organization resources become redundant. This is the third point. It means that the organization has to change in order to harness and use and collaborate with the external resources. So what is needed is an organizational change about knowledge creation and knowledge exploitation. And as a consequence, and we're going to see some examples, organizations do not have to be there at the beginning to create the knowledge in order to profit from it. Which means that being a pioneer or being first in the market is not necessarily a requirement for excellence in the market. And this, as a consequence of intellectual property strategy, because it means that you don't have to own not necessarily, at least you have to own the intellectual property. You can buy it, or you can even profit from it even if you don't own it. But even more, if you look at the so-called freemium business models, whereby you actually give knowledge out for free, there are lots of different ways now, well developed and well studied, in order to profit from actually giving out free knowledge and profiting from it, from the use of it. An example, a typical example of open innovation strategy is Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble has launched in 2006 a strategy called Connect and Develop. Connect and Develop is, as the word says, is not research and R&D, research and develop, but stresses the idea of connection. Connection to what? Connection to external networks. What is Procter & Gamble? Procter & Gamble is one of the biggest consumer products organization. It is involved in a range of products from pharmaceutical to laundry to cosmetics and so on and so forth. As I said, it changed its approach from research and develop to connect and develop. It has created a director of external innovation, meaning the director in charge of using the external network in order to create products and services that P&G can sell. It has set a goal of sourcing about 50% of its innovation from outside the company. And also, it's not only the direction of innovation, as we said, discussing the funnel, is not only from the outside toward the inside, but also the opposite, from the inside toward the outside. It means that ideas, projects that are not used within the company are given out in order to fertilize the external ecosystem of P&G. This is a way, of course, in order to change, P&G has to counter the so-called not invented here syndrome. Now, what is very important is Connect and Develop is that the role of internal resources has changed. In a research and development, a traditional R&D strategy based on the closed innovation model, you guard your knowledge by keeping a close boundary around the sources of that knowledge. Let's say technical knowledge in research and development. Here, the stress is on Connect and Develop. So, new members of, say, research and development are recruited not only because they have technical skills, but because they bring with them their own network of colleagues, their own network of institutions with which they have collaborated, their whole networks of personal network that is useful in order to solve a problem. You know, when you have a problem, a technical problem, very often you don't try to solve it yourself. You just pick the telephone and ask the person that is likely to know the solution to that problem, or you call the person who's likely to know somebody else who's likely to have the solution to that problem. We're going to see how to do that in a structured way in the next lecture. But what is important here is the value of a researcher. It is not only in what the researcher knows, in his or her capability of solving technical problems, but the value of the researcher is in the network of personal connections that the researcher has. Hence, the new strategy of Connect and Develop. And let me give you some quotes from publications on P&G. The first one, P&G spends 100 millions in R&D, but outside P&G people are spending 100 billions. This is a factor of 100 on technologies and innovation relevant to us. As we said, then how do we connect to them? Second, from the personal connection point of view. Second quote, we estimated that for every P&G researcher there are 200 scientists or engineers elsewhere who are just as good or maybe better than P&G researchers. Then, he said, then we need to connect to them. But tapping into the creative thinking of inventors and others requires massive operational changes. So, Connect and Develop is a way to transform the way the organization works. transforming the value of the values of the organizations, in order to bring in the networks of researchers and the networks that the organization can connect with or connect to. So we needed to move the company's attitude from resistance to innovation, not invented here, to enthusiasm for those ideas proudly found elsewhere. And we needed to change how we define and perceived our R&D organization from 7,000 people inside to 7,000 people plus the networks of those 7,000 people, which makes about, they say, 1.5 million outside. Clearly, the way you perceive the boundary of the organization has to be changed. It has to become permeable. From a knowledge point of view, this is an interesting quote because it says, previously researchers simply added the knowledge or added to the knowledge that was sitting in the organizational memory of P&G. Okay? Now they're also charged with moving that knowledge from the inside, if it's not used directly, to the outside. And that knowledge, the knowledge that now exists in the outside, as we said, may just be as useful, what is written here, as the knowledge created within. And this is an organizational change. If you bring knowledge from the outside instead of creating it, you have to create incentives for people for doing that. Because in traditional organization, this is not regarded, unless it is spying, it's not regarded as a particularly useful thing. So you have to create a role for identifying and accessing external knowledge. And as we said, then the role of the internal resources is not only to create knowledge, but to bring knowledge from the outside in, and to bring knowledge, or to take knowledge developed outside out. As they say here, while deep understanding remains valuable, its utility is multiplied when linked to and built on the investigation and achievement of others. And this is the network idea, if you want, the positive feedback that results when internal knowledge is linked with external knowledge in order to result into an explosion of useful ideas and process. Some results of Connect and Develop, as claimed by these publications of P&G, about 35% of products about 2006 are now ideas originated from the outside. There were about 15% in 2000. 50% of the initiatives have elements discovered externally. They claim that R&D at parity of cost, the R&D productivity has increased by nearly 60%. They claim innovation success rate has more than doubled, and R&D intensity is down from 4.8 to 3.4. Some of the P&G, in order to profit from external knowledge, P&G had to develop bridges to the external networks. And those bridges are networks in themselves. We're going in the next lecture to show something called incentive and show communities of what we call lead users that are aggregated in 9 Sigma, Yoran Core, which form type of open networks and which in general contributes to P&G external global network. What is important to stress here is that P&G doesn't own these external networks and resources. Okay? They're not tied by legal contracts, they're not tied by hierarchical dependencies. So management here shifts from control embodied into contracts, into hierarchies, to horizontal forms of collaborations whereby there's a win-win, there must be a perception of win-win on both sides, and there must be the fundamental element of trust. There must be the fundamental perception that the other individual is not there, or individual organization is not there to defect and steal the other's knowledge or competitive advantage. Some products have been developed by open innovation. Techniques in P&G are shown here, and you can explore them on your own. Finally, let me put everything together. As we said, open innovation is really about managing knowledge. Managing knowledge has got three phases. It's largely about three things: exploration, retention, and exploitation. In a closed innovation model, that means the internal, knowledge is developed inside the firm. In an external or in an open innovation model, you add to an internal channel the external channel. Okay? So you have knowledge sourcing. And this is about exploration. Retention. In closed innovation, knowledge is retained, stored within the organization, and is protected by intellectual property rights. In order to have retention, you have to have that the boundary of the organization are closed, are non-permeable, okay? In order to avoid leakage of knowledge toward the outside. In open innovation, yes, you still store knowledge, but the boundaries have to become permeable in order to allow knowledge to flow in or to flow out. And part of the knowledge is not only maintained within the organizational memory, the internal part of inside the organization, but it's also maintained in the network of relationships of the organization, okay? Alliances or other forms of interaction with external individuals, communities, and organizations. Third, exploitation. In a traditional closed innovation model, exploitation, you exploit knowledge stored and developed inside. In an open innovation model, you still do that, but in advance, you take knowledge out in order for the ecosystem of your organization to exploit it. Open innovation is not a panacea. I'm not saying, or theorists do not say, that all organizations should shift to the most extreme form of open innovation. The choice where to locate the strategy organization between a closed and an open model depends on a number of contextual parameters, depends on the context, essentially depends on a technology uncertainty, on appropriability, and on the speed of knowledge change. Uncertainty. If uncertainty is extremely high, as in many industries, then it may make sense to explore as much as possible, hence to connect to as many sources of knowledge that exist outside as possible in order to reduce exposure to a particular area of knowledge, a particular set of products, in case there's a rapid change in the technological or in the market arena, and you may find exposed to the wrong set of choices. Okay, so basically, if there is lots of uncertainty, putting all your eggs in one basket might be the wrong choice. So in this case, multiplying the portfolio of options, in this case technological options, makes sense. How do you do that? By connecting with the external world, by having multiple antennas, if you want, scanning the world, and those multiple antennas cannot be all inside the organization because the number of resources is limited, but are largely outside the organization. Second, appropriability. Appropriability means whether you can appropriate, own, defend, and easily defend the knowledge underlying your innovation capabilities. Now, appropriability might be high or might be low. If appropriability is high, then you may adopt a closed innovation strategy because you can easily defend your knowledge. If appropriability is low, it doesn't make much sense to invest in a closed innovation model. Third is the speed of change. codifying knowledge in order to store it inside, in order to protect it by intellectual property rights, takes energy and takes time. If the rate of change is very high, especially if there is high uncertainty and lower probability, then a closed innovation model may not make much sense. Also, one other thing you have to keep in mind is that the conditions in terms of uncertainty, probability, and turbulence might change during the lifetime of a project. So you may try to adopt an open innovation strategy at the beginning of a project and then move toward a more closed approach toward the end of a project. Okay, readings. I would like you to read two things. First, a publication by Chesbrough called The Year of Open Innovation, and second, an article on Procter & Gamble that will detail the way P&G has moved from a closed to an open innovation strategy. And this is the end of the first part of the lecture on open innovation.